G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today, we're going to be talking about the new era of top tier jets that is coming to War Thunder. As you can see in the background, we're going to have some MiG-21SMT gameplay, and one of the things that I would really like to start to bring up is the importance of the way that this sort of meta is shifting. You see, a year ago, we got our first supersonic capable jets. We got the F-100D and the MiG-19PT, and both of these planes were very, very gun-focused. These planes relied on their performance and their guns to make maneuvers to get kills, or in some cases to drain energy, in some cases to bait. In this case here, 12 months later, we have the MiG-21SMT, the MiG-21MF, and now the Phantom FGR-2, which almost solely rely on their missiles. We're getting to a point where War Thunder aviation is no longer about making maneuvers to get kills, but it's about who can best use their avionics or their weapon systems and their missiles. We're getting to a point where the performance of the plane is starting to matter less. Of course, there is always going to be some part of the plane where performance is key. For example, in raw speed, for example, or in climb rate. But in terms of a pure dogfighting situation, you don't get a traditional dogfight anymore. You don't get a situation where you have someone, reversing, because the moment you get slow, an R60 comes out behind you and takes you out. We're getting to a point where I don't really know whether this is going to be good or bad, but it's definitely going to be interesting. And interesting is exactly what this match entails. You see, I'm in the MiG-21SMT here. I have 4 R60 missiles, I have a radar warning receiver, and of course I have a forward radar. You can see that I've used the forward radar to try and get a lock onto this Phantom before we go head on, and as we go head on, all I have to do is make one small turn to pull away. Again, I'm going to try it with the F4C, but it's not going to give me any dice. I squeeze 1 or 2 shells away and get the hell out of there. You see, what I'm doing now is I'm looking at positioning myself either above or behind my opponents, because above means that I can dive and pick up more speed, and behind means that I can get a missile off. At top tier jets, I used to employ a rush tactic, and at this particular BR of 10.3, that's probably where I would stop doing it. Simply because the missiles are starting to become extremely powerful. R60s, with the 18G overload and really strong lock overall. You can pretty much lock from the side, you can lock even frontally at some points, but you also have the Phantom FGR-2 with the 16G overload missiles. You can see here that I've got myself behind this Phantom, and the combination of the radar lock and the 18G missile is going to land with my first critical hit. The critical hit will start a fire, and I will get my first kill off this. You see, jets is no longer about maneuvers, in terms of, the traditional sense. The reversals, the boom and zooms. It's more about maintaining your speed, and trying to slot in behind your opponent. And honestly, it's a mix. It's a mix between boring and interesting. Because boring in the sense that you don't get those thrilling dogfights, you don't have to be extremely careful with your aim. Rather, instead, you have to be extremely careful with your positioning. This is where it's going to become important. You can see that I've positioned myself poorly to go for this F4 because the F4 is turning with me. And whilst he's turning with me, I'm bleeding a lot of speed. Not only does the MiG-21 bleed a lot of speed in this kind of turn, but the F4 does as well. And the SMT, being a little bit heavier than all the other traditional MiG-21s in the game, it's not quite as good at turning. In fact, it's almost just as bad at low speeds as the Phantom. Although, not entirely. However, there are some things that make this kind of gameplay kind of boring, if I do say so myself, in a certain respect. And that is the fact that everyone just has to play fast. If everyone plays fast, no one gets into some of these incredible sort of heart-racing dogfights. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up for you to decide. But in this case, I'm actually going to be able to get a 1v1 dogfight in. You see, this Phantom here wants to play a little bit, and you can see that he's gone down, and I'm going to follow suit. Now, the Phantom can probably, outpull in some certain circumstances, but is more an energy monster. It is more built to just go fast and be an absolute beast in terms of its sort of speed and its energy retention. Whereas the MiG-21 is more designed around that first turn ability, or the ability to sort of get inside the enemy, so to sort of cut inside, if you will, quite briefly, and not really designed for sustained dogfights, because you can see I've lost over half my speed. And in this particular plane, you don't really want to be dropping below 1,000 kilometers per hour if you're in a 1vx kind of situation. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself into a straight line, try and pick up some speed, and you can see, even though the F100 there is quite slow, and the T2 as well is also quite slow, I'm not able to go and get onto the target, because the speeds are a little bit quick. You see, below 1,000 kilometers per hour, you're not really going to get many kills, especially in these kinds of planes. With the ability to first turn, or AOA, or whatever you'd like to call it, these planes can quite quickly evade a single barrage or a single salvo, or whatever you'd like to call it. But in a sustained fight like this, where the T2 is constantly turning, and I'm able to sort of boom and zoom, if you will, like a crude type of boom and zoom, then I'm able to actually maintain an advantage. And whilst this is boring for some people, it's also extremely exciting for others. And I don't quite know where I sit yet, but see, in situations where you've got a slow jet, they tend to be a dead jet, and the only thing that can really save you is your speed. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. I kind of like it, and I kind of see where it goes wrong. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe there is a place for this kind of stuff in War Thunder, because, at top tier tanks as well, it isn't really about, angling armor and penetration. It's more about positioning and stuff like that, which I find kind of cool as well. But at the same time, is there something kind of missing? Do we really want to go into this era where it's all missiles and no sort of dogfights? And I think, in some respects, as long as the avionics and as long as everything is balanced, as long as there's parity across all nations, then I don't see a reason why not to. There's a place for the dogfights, which is sort of 9.0, 9.3, 9.7, and then there's also a space for missiles, which will be sort of 10.0, 10.3, and in the future 10.7 and 11.0. It's kind of interesting, but it's also kind of, I don't know, it's kind of scary. Are we going to get planes that are just brutally overpowered from this? Are we going to get situations where there is just nothing you can do? Are there changes to RRB that we need to make for this particular era of dogfighting? Do we need, obviously, slightly bigger maps, but also, do we need smaller matches? Do we need matches where it's 7v7 instead of 15 versus 15? Because in this case, you have a lot less of a clusterfuck and more of a sort of organized engagement. Is it more supposed to be for, I guess, faster dogfights? Are we looking at more high altitude fights? Are we looking at, maybe better avionics systems in the future? AIM 7s, perhaps? Radar guided missiles and, the subsequent systems or in-game mechanics to deal with this sort of thing. This is an ace game, and this is basically because I managed to maintain my speed and get my missiles off in the proper spot. Does it allow for a proper teamwork as well, because most of these kills were slowed down by my friendlies? These are all things that we're going to have to figure out as a group as War Thunder goes into its sort of new era of aviation. And it's kind of interesting. I'm a little bit worried, but at the same time I'm quite excited, because sometimes Gaijin fucks things up, sometimes Gaijin does them well, and it's only a matter of time before we see how that goes. Now, just before we finish up today, I'd like to point you towards my battle activity and my battle time, and the amount of silver lines they gave me, 7,800, and compare that to the air targets destroyed, which is 5 at 30k. Keep up your battle activity, ladies and gents. Anyway, ladies and gents, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.